So next up, we've got what I've been watching at home. Now, in previous months, I haven't had too much in this section, but with only seeing 6 films in theaters, that left a lot more time to watch stuff at home. So this is much more of a full section than I think I had last month. So Jack Ryan had their third season come out in December. I started it in January and finished it in February. I think I was about halfway through maybe episode 5 of 8 at the end of January, and then I knocked out the last 3 in the course of like an evening or two. And this is a solid show. I don't know that it quite gets to the level of great, although it did fly by. Like I think it took a little bit to get into the show, but especially the end, I was just like, give me the next episode, give me the next episode, and I went right through it. So this one's right between great and good for me. I don't know. I really like John Krasinski, but I think if I take that out of it, I would say it's a solid good show. It's one that I recommend if you're looking for something to see, but I don't think it's a show I would go out of my way to recommend to people. But definitely in the upper side of B for me. I'd probably go even like a B plus. Creed 2, I have mixed feelings about this. I think I ended up watching this in 2 sittings, which maybe didn't help, but I thought it was just fine. It didn't really jump out to me as being all that special, but maybe on reflection, I think I've felt that maybe it was a little bit better and a little bit more interesting than I initially thought. I didn't necessarily care for the whole Drago thing. I'm like, this is just rehashing a villain. Granted, it's the son, but I don't know. I think Drago as the other half of the story was not the most compelling. But I don't know. I think thinking on it more though, it's interesting I think on paper, but it didn't come through in the film as much. For like what does it do psychologically to be up against the person or the son of the person who killed your father? And I mean, they present that idea, but I guess I didn't connect with it as much while I was watching it. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I liked that one more. I do like the Creed franchise as a whole, but yeah, that one just came across as fine for me. The Great British Baking Show, I just finished another season of this. I want to say it was maybe season 7. And this is a good show, a solid show. I like it. I like getting a new batch of bakers and then getting to kind of know them over the course of the season. It's fun to kind of connect with them. And yeah, so far all this stuff is stuff that I've watched. This whole top row actually of movies and shows is stuff that I watched for the first time this last month. So Moulin Rouge, I had never seen before, watched for the first time. This one as well, I did in 2 sittings. Got about halfway through and then watched the second half a different day. And this is an interesting film. I can see why it's a classic and that it got nominated for as many awards as it did. I thought it was good. I thought it was a solid B. I don't know that I would say it's like great, but I recognize kind of its place in pop culture and that sort of a thing. It kind of came across as a sort of like this story felt very similar to Phantom of the Opera for me, and which isn't bad. It was just that was something interesting to note come the end of the film. But yeah, it's definitely a very unique film and one that I'm glad I've seen, but I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend it. And then Wednesday, this was definitely a great show. I binged this. Maybe not as fast as I would have liked. I was like, man, when do I have time to get the next episode of Wednesday in? But a really good show. I like teen dramas in general, so this was right up my alley. And then I think it's just the sort of Tim Burton flair, although he's not the creator of the show, but he directed many of the episodes. It's definitely has his, yeah, it's definitely a Tim Burton production, and Jenna Ortega does a great job in the main role. And I thought the mystery was pretty good. They give you enough clues to kind of have some guesses and a few misdirects. So yeah, great show. I highly recommend it. I would definitely go out of my way to recommend that one and talk about it. And then this bottom row is all things that I rewatched this last month. So I've seen before, but the fact that I'm rewatching it hopefully communicates or expresses that, you know, these are films that I love. That's not always the case, but with these, they were all very good films. I think, yeah, Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I didn't like as much on the second time through as the first, but it's still a great film in my opinion. I just found it very interesting and with the story that it has to tell. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, this was one of my favorite movies that came out that year. I think I would have said prior that it's a masterpiece, but I realized this time around the second half of the film is not as good as the first half. I think the first half of this film is a masterpiece, and then the second half gets a little too much into the action, which I still like, but it's not as good as the first half, which is a lot more character focused. And then Kick-Ass is such a great film. It's been forever since I had seen that and watched it with some friends. Some had seen it before, but not for a long time. Some hadn't, and we all had a really good time. That's just such a fun movie. I think Nicolas Cage is great in there. All the actors are great, but so fun to see Nicolas Cage in that role. But yeah, I highly recommend all three of these movies if you haven't seen them. They're like Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse is such a great film. It borders on masterpiece in my opinion, and these other two are great. I think, yeah, there's nothing quite like Kick-Ass out there. The Boys is kind of like it, kind of, but not really. Yeah, it's such a unique film and something that even the sequel couldn't really replicate. So that's what I've been watching this last month. If you've got any recommendations, I've got a pretty big backlog that I'm working through because I didn't watch a ton of TV last year. So as of filming this, I just wrapped on The White Lotus, but technically that'll go on next month's kind of what I've been watching at home because we're in March at this point. But I also want to watch The Last of Us, and they've got some other shows coming out. So, but yeah, I'd love to hear it though, what you've been watching at home. I love hearing what is good out there. It's so hard to kind of keep track of everything and get stuff on your radar because there's just such a plethora of content these days. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you enjoy watching at home and what you've been getting into lately. So please, yeah, share that in the comments down below.